Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Deliberately Creative with Stephanie from DeliberatelyCreative.blogspot.com. I am here to show you how to make an incredibly adorable gnome. And we are going to be doing this without an original gnome, and I'm going to just work my way through it, and at the end we'll have the finished gnome. So this is sort of a mystery project for you. We're going to be using a piece of felt. This is just a little 6-inch square of felt. Doesn't have to be a perfect square. It just is nice to know that you don't need more than a 6-inch square of felt. I've cut out some pattern pieces. This will be the body. This will be the hat. And this will be the base. There's only going to be one seam down the back of the body, and then a stitching around the base where the base meets the body. Right, like that. Where the base meets the body. And it will go all the way around. This base may have to be trimmed down just a little bit, and that's okay. We're making this up as we go along. And I am going to zoom out just a smidge. There we go. You will need a sewing needle and some thread. This happens to be green embroidery floss. Just plain old embroidery floss. I tend to like using a long piece of thread. I don't have it knot up on me that much. If it starts twisting up, I'll just pick it up and let it hang so that it will untwist. And then I keep going. Some other things that you'll need. You'll need a couple pennies to put in the base. That gives it the weight to keep it from flipping or toppling over. You'll need something that you want to use for his beard, because our little gnomes have very fuzzy beards. This happens to be a little bit of wool roving. I like to spin wool into yarn, so I have some bags and bags of wool roving. This is a natural color. There's no dye. It's just cleaned and not dyed. And I'll be pulling off pieces of this and folding it and gluing it down onto his face. You'll need something for a nose. I'm going to use this little button, but you can use a bead. You can use a piece of polymer clay that's been rolled up into a little ball and baked. And we will be gluing this on to the beard as the nose. His little hat will actually hide over part of that. You're not going to have to put any eyes. You're not going to have to put any lips or mouth parts. So let's get started. Remember, we're doing this as an experiment. This is a project. I've done these before, but I've never taught how to do it. With the gnome body, and I will put the pattern pieces up on my, probably in my Instagram and in my Pinterest. Those will be listed down below in the information where it says more. You'll click on that right down there. You'll click on more, and it will give you all of the information and the locations of where you can find the files and where you can find me. So what I'm going to do is just take this piece of felt and put it down. This is the body. You only need one piece, one layer, and I'm drawing around it with my pen. So printing your body out onto cardstock gives you a little bit more of something for your pen to knock against. I'm going to take this piece and lay it down here. This is the hat, and I'm going to trace around it also. The hat is pretty much the same size as the body. It's just a little bit wider. Just a little bit wider. So if you see here, I don't know if you can see that very well, but see how it's just a little bit wider? And that's so when the hat is stitched and goes onto his head will be able to fit up inside. See, you can already see kind of the way he's going to go together. All right. So now we'll cut these pieces out. Oh, before I cut those out, I am going to cut the base. And I'm just going to trace it right about here. Now this base is a little bit big because when we're sewing it on, we need something to hold on to. All right, so now I am going to trim this out. Here's his hat. And you'll hear my dog in the background. He's 15 years old and he's deaf. He can't really hear himself barking. He knows he's barking, but he can't really hear himself barking. So I can't yell at him because he can't hear me. Or I could yell at him, but he still wouldn't hear me. And it really doesn't make me feel any better to yell. So the only way I can really get him to stop is by going and touching him to let him know that I'm there. But I have to be careful when I do that because he doesn't see as well as he used to either. He can still see, but he doesn't see as well as he used to. And so if you surprise him, he sometimes will turn and snap at you. And that's no fun. It's no fun for any of us. All right, so my piece of thread, I've made sure and tied a knot in the end. Let's see here. See, knot in the end of the thread. And all I'm going to do is fold this in half. And I like to start at the base and work my way up the back here. And I'm just going to do a tiny whip stitch. I'm starting with my knot on the inside. So on the inside of the fabric here. I'm just keeping it tucked in. And if you feel more comfortable doing it, you can pin this. I tend to get poked by pins, so I don't use pins very often. So now I'm just going to do a little whip stitch. And it's a tiny, real close to each other stitch. That way you don't have, here, let's see if I can get that to focus there. Come on, focus. There, that'll focus a little better right there, I think. Okay, so tiny stitch. And for the first few stitches, it's going to want to wrap around that bottom edge. All you do is pick it up, move it back to where it belongs. It's just a loop of the thread. So now my dog has come back and he's curled up in his kennel behind me and he's snoring. So Now, you might end up hearing snoring at some point, and it's not because I've gone to sleep. So I'm just going to stitch really quick here now. I'm going to take that down just a little bit so I can see it better. And if you look at this, you can see there's possibilities for doing other types of projects with this sort of shape. You could be making little elf shoes, rounding off this back end, not stitching it across here, but stitching it here and up the toe, and you'd be able to have an elf shoe. You could make a little doll that goes this way that uses the felt balls as a little head. Make little pea pod dolls. All kinds of things. I love sewing with felt, and I love sewing with felt that has some color variation, some heather sort of texture to it. I'm not so fond of the carnival colored craft felt. I mean, bright pink has its place, bright orange, but I like these colors that are a little more natural tones, and they call them heathered because there's multi-colors, but they all kind of go together, and I really like that. Now, we are stitching straight up the back, and we're going to close it all the way up. We're not worrying about leaving someplace open right now because the bottom is open. And we'll put our stuffing in from that side, drop a couple pennies in, and then put the bottom on. And then it will just be doing the hat and putting on the face. So this is actually a pretty fast project. Less than half an hour, you can have a cute little gnome. You can make a whole grouping of them. Do them in different colors. You can hang a little card from them. You could tie on some acorns. You can put them in a scene with some woodland type of creatures. If you've got like a little deer, you can put the gnome next to the deer under your tree. Or you can tuck these in the tree. You can just set them on the branches if you don't have critters that are going to go knocking them off. Or you can leave a little of your thread after you've worked all the way up here to the end. Work all the way to the end, close it off, come back and forth a couple times just to finish it off. And now I could leave a loop and just come back and tie this off with a knot. So what I'm doing to tie that knot, I'm just, sorry, my thread came out a little bit. There we go. I'm just going around and around a couple, 2 or 3 times. That was the 3rd time right there. And then I'm going to stick my needle right through the middle of all those threads, right underneath of them, and pull it through, and then trim it off. So now I've got a hang cord on. Looks like half of a pea pod, doesn't that? So now I don't have enough thread to go all the way around the base comfortably. So I'm going to grab a little bit more thread. I already had it cut. but it's a little bit uneven here on the end. So I'm just going to trim that off, just to make it easier to, yeah, you're not going to be able to see me thread a needle. That's just not going to happen very well. Sometimes wetting the end of the needle helps the thread go through. And it looks like it did this time. There you go. And now I'm going to tie a knot in the end, which is just pinching the thread between my fingers and my thumb and my finger, wrapping around my finger loosely, and then just rolling the thread off my finger and pulling it into a knot. So there we are. Nice knot. So what I'm going to do here is go like this, and I'm going to put some stuffing in. And you don't have to stuff this so tight. You want it to be to hold its shape around, but it doesn't have to be stuffed, packing it in so tight that that you could use it as a, I don't know, poking something. You don't want to have to, you don't want it so tight that you'd be able to poke somebody with it. You want it to bend. Oh wow, looks like a witch's finger. There it is. The old stereotype Wicked Witch fingers. There you go. Nah, actually, it still looks like a pea pod to me. Half of a pea pod. So, just using my finger and jamming it in, but not ramming it so tight. And that's going to be it. That's all I'm going to put in there. Kind of mush it down. I did not put any up in this part up here. I don't need to, because, oh, I just thought of something. If I put the hat on, this string isn't going to make a difference. It's already tied off in a knot. I'm just going to snip it. We don't want that there, because if we put that there, when you put the hat on the top, it's going to be closed in, and you're not going to be able to access it anyway. All right. See, that's why we said this was an experiment, and we're practicing our world here. So, the circle is too big. The circle is way, way too big. So what I'm going to do is I'll just take my pen. Yep, it's out. And just a little bit out from the base. Just going to draw around the bottom. And I'm going to trim this off. Now the reason why we have this base big is because we may not always cut the triangle that we used for the body exactly the same. And by doing the base big, you've got room to make adjustments. And now we are going to put pennies into the base. Pennies will sit here. And see, a penny fits perfectly there. And I will probably be putting 3 pennies. And the reason why I'm going to put 3 pennies is because that's what I just picked up. So I'll just set those there for now. Start off stitching the base on. I'm going to start stitching from the inside of the gnome and just pull my thread through. Whoops, picked up some spare thread. And now I am going to put the base on, and I'm going to put it with the pen side, the side that I just drew my pen on, to the inside. Let's see, can you see that? Yes, you can see that. All right, so now I am just going to do a very small whip stitch, and I'm going to get halfway around, or halfway around, because I will need to be able to slip the pennies in still. It's easier to do this if the pennies aren't slipping all around on you. So, and I'm just going to do this very quickly, or as quickly as I can. Not necessarily as quickly as some people could do it, probably. But I said that we were doing this as an experiment, and I want to make sure that you see all of my thought process here. We don't need to do, if it's less than 20 minutes long, oh, we're right at 20 minutes. So I could do it sped up, do it as a speed craft, and then do it as a the longer craft. It's still going to be done in about half an hour. So I don't know if I'm going to speed it up or not. I kind of like watching the videos when they're the long process video. Then it feels more like I'm sitting and visiting with someone, and we're just crafting together. And I hope you feel that way when you're listening to me. I'd love it if you'd leave me comments. Let me know if I'm being helpful here. If you would like to see more videos. All right, I've gone halfway around. I'm going to slip those pennies in. And that's going to make it so that this little guy does not just tip over. And now I've gotten all the way, halfway around, and I can see that my base really is still an extra bit long, or extra bit wide. So I'm going to be careful not to cut my stitches that I'd already put in, and then just trim that off a little bit. And continue whip stitching around. You can see the pennies getting sealed up inside. And my dog has decided to start, whoops, there we go. Got to see it untwist a little bit. My dog has gotten up and decided to bark again. But I enjoy doing these felt crafts. They're fast, they're easy, they're things that you can do with kids. You don't have to hem, you don't have to flip them inside out. The stitching that you do can be done in a matching color, or it can be done in a contrasting color. And what I did is I just poked the needle in and pushed it through the inside of that those stitches here, and had it come out, and then just trimmed it off. So now, oops, there it is. I tried. So now, it doesn't like to, it will fall over if I push it far enough. But right here, I'm going pretty darn far, and it just pops right back. So, we have the little body. We're going to do the hat very quickly. Put the the pattern pen marks, put that to the inside. And again, we will start with tying a knot first. And sometimes it helps to wet your finger before you put the thread on your finger and wrap the thread around, because then the thread has someplace to stick. I rolled off and left kind of long tail, so I'm going to trim that off. And now the hat. It'd be good if I don't pull it so hard. There we are. Now I'm going to start stitching around that, and we're just doing that whip stitch again, which is just poking it in and coming over the top, and always poking it in from the same side. You could do a running stitch. I just like how this edge looks with that whip stitch like that. I just like that whipped stitch look. It sort of comes out looking flatter than, you don't end up with a standing seam. If you do a running stitch, if you ran your stitches along here like this, you would end up with these edges of your felt showing instead of being sealed in. Not that it matters. It's not going to go it's not going to fray. It's not going to, come apart. Both ways are equally good. It's all a matter of what you like to look at, or what you feel comfortable doing. If you feel more comfortable doing a whip stitch, by all means, please do a whip stitch. If you like to do a blanket stitch, you can do a blanket stitch on this also. And if you want to do a running stitch or a back stitch, you can do any of those. Anything that's going to get you from one end of your piece to the other end and attach both sides together. You could do this with hot glue and just glue the two sides together, this edge. Glue this edge together. You could glue down this whole edge, gluing those together. Stuff it, drop your pennies in, put hot glue on, and drop your base on. So you could have this all done really fast with a hot glue gun. But it's not the project I'm doing. I'm not using my hot glue gun. I have one. I have a really good hot glue gun. Melts glue really well. Burns fingers really well. And I rather like the look of the stitching. So that's why I'm stitching this. I am not going to put a loop at the top of this. I am going to wait until after he is all put together with his hat on his head. And then I will stitch through. Oh, my needle came out before of just one bit of the thread, and then started pulling. There we go. Got it cleaned up. And trim that off. So now we have the hat. We have the body. We're getting really close. And I need to zoom out a little bit more. There we go. So we have the hat and the body. Now, I needed to know how far down the hat comes so that I can put a line of glue as soon as my glue comes down. There we go. Got my line of glue. Just going to lay him down. Stay. Okay, that's good. Pick up my roving and go, woo, that's really long. I think that's way longer than I want to be. So I'm just going to pull this roving apart. This is a pretty long staple roving, which means long staple just means that it's the hairs are really long. See, this is going to go clear down to his tummy, or to his toes. We don't want it to go clear down to his toes, so I'm just trying to get work down to some shorter hair, because that's what this is. It's just sheep hair. We're going to drop that on there, sort of mush it in to the glue. Now this would be a good spot where hot glue would work well. But again, I don't have my hot glue gun in here, turned on, plugged in, ready to go. But I'm putting glue on the top of that. And I'm going to put the button on. And I'm just sort of pinching it in, just pinching it. And I will put a bit of glue up here on the top of the head, inside the area where the hat's going to be, because that will help us attach it all together. And did I slip down? No, I did not. So why? We have to work his little nose up inside there. And this is also an experiment, getting his nose tucked in so it looks nosy. And he's going to roll over because now he's got more weight on him going that way. He's not going to have feet added. His little beard, we can curl and swirl. Nice thing about the wool is that you can do a little manipulating with the wool. So there you have it. Cute little gnome. Let's see if I've got... Can you see him better on that? See him better over the top? Not really. I will move that black out of the way. Yep, too much black makes a difference. So there you go. He's got his little nose sticking out there. He's got his beard swirling over. And it took just about half an hour to do. Probably would have been less. Now, this is the first time I've used a button for his nose. I'm not as really tickled with that button for the nose. But I do have some little polymer balls that I made. I just took some little bits of polymer clay and made little balls and baked them in the oven at the temperature that's recommended on the package. I just used the cheap white Sculpey polymer clay. So I think I'm going to look for that real quick here, and I'll be right back. Hi there, so I'm back. All right, I'm going to pop this little button nose off because, like I said, I'm not real happy with it. And that's part of experimentation. So that's what he looks like without a nose at all. And here is what he looks like. This is just one of those little polymer clay balls that I made. Doesn't have a hole in it. You could use a small bead, like a small round, just a small round bead. You could use a small wood bead. You could use any kind of bead. So I'm just going to put a blob of glue in there and put his nose in there. And I like that better. I like that. It just makes him look like he's got a real little nose in there. Makes him look almost more cartoon-like. Like one of those little cartoon gnome. There we go. You can play with his beard and swirl it around, and but there you are. That's a finished gnome. Now I'm going to let him lay down for a little while. Keep him from tipping over too far. Whoops, bring him forward though. Let him lay down like that. Keep him in that position for a little while until the glue dries and holds his nose in place. And like I said, that would be a spot that would be a prime candidate for hot glue. Just a little splot of hot glue and put his nose on. You could also do that with his beard. Put the hot glue on and put his beard pieces in. Get them glued down. Put his nose on the top of that. And then slip his hat on over it. And if I were doing that, I would just put a drop of hot glue on the back here. After I put his hat on, I would just put a drop of hot glue in the back. But he is finished, except for putting a string on the top of his hat if I wanted to hang him. But I don't think that I really do. I like to have these guys standing on different surfaces. And I made some little mushrooms with acorn caps and sticks. And you fill the acorn cap with a bit of hot glue, put your stick in, and while it's all still hot and bubbly in there, you take a little bit of that wool roving and you stick it on and you just twirl and twirl, and that covers most of that hot glue in there. Let's see if I can get that to focus. There we are. It covers that hot glue, and that makes little mushrooms that you can put into a little scene with your little gnome. How cute is that? Hey, you got an extra craft for sticking with me and making it to the end. You learned how to make acorn cap mushrooms with twigs and acorn caps and a little bit of the roving that you use for his beard. So, if you like this video, please click like, share it with your friends, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought, good or bad, either way. I want to make these videos better. And then go ahead and subscribe so you can find out when my next video is. I really appreciate it. And remember, go out and do something creative.